I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered them, the disciples, not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. The Gospel of the Lord. There is a certain psychiatric condition known as delusions of grandeur, where somebody imagines that they are some very important person. And it seems that one of the important people that many people select to be as Jesus. And it seems that there's a situation when in Ypsilanti, Michigan, there were 3 gentlemen, all about the same time, who claimed that they were Jesus. Well, they ended up in a psychiatric institution, and they decided that it might be good to put the 3 together and see what would happen. It was kind of like a messianic 12-step program or a reality therapy to see if any reality would break through here. So on the first day, right off, one of the gentlemen said, "I am Jesus, the Savior of the world." Another one said, "Who told you?" And he said, "God told me." And the third gentleman said, "I never told you any such thing." Well, I'm not sure how those people came out, but hopefully they were cured. I came back to some degree of reality. Jesus, the real Jesus, was exactly the opposite. He did not flaunt his messiahship. In fact, we've all heard this story before, and we're kind of used to it. So let's imagine that you never heard about Jesus. Imagine that you were living 2,000 years ago. Imagine that you were in some obscure place that we now call Israel. And imagine that one day this gentleman came around whose name was Jesus, and he said, "Follow me." And you said, "I got nothing better to do today. We'll try this out." And then you heard what Jesus said, and it was pretty remarkable. And then Jesus cured somebody right in front of your eyes. And you said, "Wow." And then he cured somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. The blind were seeing, the deaf were hearing, and people were even raised from the dead, and you say, "Wow, this guy is really something special. He must be at least a new prophet, or maybe one of the old prophets come back." So Jesus today has a little test. You know, teachers like to give tests. Tests to find out what we've learned, but also I think tests to find out how well they've taught. And Jesus didn't want to say, "I'm the Messiah." He wanted them to figure it out on their own, to put all this together. And when he says, "Who do people say that I am?" they say, "Well, maybe Elijah or John the Baptist or Jeremiah or one of those guys." And then Jesus said, "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter looks down deep into his heart and all of a sudden puts it all together and says, "You are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus must have said, "Wow, we got it. We got to base 1, first step." He realizes, they all realize, that I'm more than a prophet, that I've come from God. Now, the reason he didn't want to tell anybody else is that 99% of the people thought that the Messiah would be a warrior god who would wipe out the Romans and create general havoc and warfare. And Jesus knows that he's not that kind of Messiah. That's not the Messiah that God is sending. The Messiah that I am, he's saying, is a God of peace and love. He wants to start a revolution of love. And if we say I'm the Messiah, they'll carry this off in some other directions, and so we can't talk about that. So keep it to yourself. And next week, you'll hear what his job is. So we'll save that for next week. So Jesus is saying they got the message, and that is good. Now we have to change what they think about Messiah. But in the meantime, I think he's asking us, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Who is Jesus for you? Who is Jesus for me? Now, as I think about that question for me, I say that it's a little tricky, because I think Jesus works in me, but he's pretty sneaky. There's a story about a man who converted to Christianity. And one of his friends who was atheist, excuse me, one of his friends who was atheist wanted to know all about this. And so a couple of years after he had converted, the atheist said, "So you converted?" "Yes." "Well, tell me about this Jesus person. Where did he live?" And the man says, "Well, I'm not really sure." "Okay, well, how many sermons did he preach?" "Well, I'm not really sure." "How old was he when he died?" "Well, I'm not really sure." And the atheist said, "Well, you really don't know much about this person that you think is the center of the world." And the man said, "Well, that's true, and I'm ashamed of it. But this much I know. I used to be drunk most of the time. When I came home from work, my wife and my kids were sorry to see me come. I was in debt. I was about to lose my job. Everything was going wrong. And somehow, I found Jesus. And I turned my life over to Jesus. And Jesus and I have been working on this together. And now I no longer drink. I'm no longer in debt. My family is happy. Everything is wonderful, all because of Jesus." So let me tell you a little bit about my story. Once upon a time, I used to smoke. I mean, a couple packs of Marlboro a day for a number of years. Should have known better. It was before we knew too much about all this stuff. It's a long time ago. And I didn't really care to quit. I knew I probably should, but I really didn't want to. And so Jesus didn't argue with me. We didn't talk about this. But Jesus, I think, as I look back on it, I think Jesus built into me an urge to get some exercise. I was feeling restless. I needed to get some energy out. And so Jesus made me feel like I needed to exercise. But the more I've exercised, the less I smoked. And the less I smoked, the more I exercised, until finally, it was done. I didn't smoke anymore. Now, had Jesus said, "I want to fix you," I probably would have resisted, because we humans do that. But he snuck up on me, and he did it before I knew it. And I think that's how he does in a lot of people's lives. He sneaks up on you. And it's only by looking back in the rearview mirror of life can we say, "Oh, look what Jesus has done for me. Isn't that amazing?" And Jesus allowed me to make a lot of mistakes, but he also allowed me to learn from most of them. And Jesus kept me from making some huge mistakes. And here I am. He's still got more work to do, apparently, because I'm still here. But Jesus has been working. And so I would ask that you look back on your life and ask yourself, what has Jesus been doing with you? How has he been working in you? How has he helped you change and become a better person? Who is Jesus for you?